Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Dave, Season 2, Episode 5, Bar Mitzvah, is the episode of the show Dave that I'm going to be spoiling, I'm going to be breaking down, I'm going to be talking about every little bit of this episode. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, if you haven't seen the show, I invite you to move on along to another episode of The Ray Taylor Show, because I am going to spoil this show right now. Starting off this episode, we are at Dave's mansion where his studio has gotten him this giant place to record, write, produce his new album. And they're out on the patio, and it's GaTa. Song is playing. We have GaTa, we got Els, we got Dave. GaTa is trying to show off his new song, Check Up, to Els, who is the producer for Dave, who has been going on tour with Trippie Redd. Only been in one episode, I believe. He was in one episode a few episodes ago. I think it was Antsy, where he showed up and he was back in town, had a little party. Looks like he's back in town for a little bit again. And, you know, GaTa, as always, trying to promote himself, trying to do the same thing that Dave's trying to do, trying to make his dreams of becoming a rap star a reality. And he's trying to see what Els thinks, because he has a lot of respect for Els. He also calls Els the hardest working man in hip-hop, which Dave gets a little bit offended by. You also have Mike comes in and comes out to where they are all hanging out, and goes over the fact that they're hired to do a bar mitzvah, and he's organizing the sound check that's going to happen. GaTa doesn't need to be there, but Els and Dave need to be there because it's a good gig, and they're paying like multiples over Dave's rate, and Dave needs the money. Obviously, at least needs to get something going on because he's not writing the album. I mean, very little work has been done, as far as we know, on this album that he's supposed to be creating. And Dave is going off on the memories, the old times with him and Els, how they used to go to bar mitzvahs all the time. They would always get kicked out because they were doing stuff that they weren't supposed to do as kids generally do. They were the troublemakers back in the day, and Dave is reminiscing about those old memories, including a bomb threat that they once called in on a bar mitzvah to get kicked out. But Els has to leave, so now it's just Dave and GaTa out on the patio, and GaTa asks Dave for money, which is a little awkward. You know, GaTa is the hype man for Dave, but there's no shows going on. The album's not even recorded. Like, there's nothing for GaTa to do to make any money right now. So he's asking for some money. They mildly talk about a number, but Dave asked for them to talk about it another time when he's not high, which GaTa, as positive and welcoming and as always, says that that's cool. And then Dave throws out, I am Queens Boulevard, which is clearly a reference from Entourage. Dave is even, like, GaTa has no idea what it is. He laughs at it, not knowing what the reference is, and Dave is questioning that he does even know what Entourage is. Is like that even a thing in black culture? Which I thought was funny, because Dave, the show, at least this season, is very similar in some ways to Entourage, kind of. It's a group of people, one of which is the star, Vinny Chase. Dave is the Vinny Chase, kind of, and GaTa is almost like the brother drama in some ways, and then everybody else is kind of like Entourage. Mike is like I forget the names of the people in Entourage, but there are similarities. I would say that instead of acting, they're doing the hip hop thing. But I would say that this show is far better quality than Entourage, despite the fact that Entourage is one of those kind of guilty pleasure type of shows. It's a show that I go back to, and it's amazing how just the political correctness of the show, it does not hold up whatsoever. Not that it did, I'm sure, when it came out, but when it came out, I was in my 20s, and when a dude's in their 20s, it's very different type of person than the person you are when you hit 40. So the show Entourage has different meaning, but every once in a while I dip back into it and watch it because it's like wish fulfillment type of it's crazy. It's probably the most garbage TV that I still watch, or that I will return to watch, that just is complete garbage. It is despite the fact that I know it's complete garbage, not even even more garbage than a lot of reality TV shows. But GaTa didn't get the reference, but I laughed at it because I can't help but enjoy the Entourage comparisons. So now cut to Dave is over at Allie and Emma's place. They're all sitting around the coffee table making snowflakes, which is kind of funny. I mean, funny for it's Christmas time in LA, obviously, which nothing really signifies that it's Christmas time in LA in any way except for if there's decorations up. So they're making snowflakes. Later on in this episode, we see some Christmas lights. But everything else and you see people wearing jackets, anything more than a t-shirt, it's probably around winter time in LA. But still looks bright and sunny. It could be any day of the year really in LA, because most of the days look exactly the same. But the decorations makes this more of a Christmas episode, I guess you could say. So they're all sitting around the coffee table. Dave's still reminiscing about childhood stories, about times where he sat on a sprinkler and felt the water shoot through his body, trying not to get hard, and just all of the really disgusting things that boys do as children, which is true, which is definitely something that women don't, unless you grew up with a lot of brothers or grew up around a lot of dudes. There's definitely women that have probably partaken in some of the debauchery of young boys. But Emma and Allie do not at all believe that it is as common as Dave would lead them to believe, that young boys would be doing such disgusting things. Not only sitting on a sprinkler, but also licking a hamster's pussy, which is just disgusting. And I think as children, right, there are a few kids that will do the thing that other people would dare them to do. And we already saw Dave as a kid in the episode, the talent show episode, where he was that guy, where his group of friends would push him into doing stunts to entertain them. He was the joke to them. He was their own little personal Johnny Knoxville to be a jackass for their own entertainment. And Dave is reminiscing about those times, kind of going back, regressing in some ways back to the Dave before he killed his younger self in that episode. But he's reminiscing about those times. They're not buying it. Cut to Mike and Els, or Mike and Dave are walking into the house of the family that is hiring him for the bar mitzvah to do the sound check. As they're walking in, Mike is telling Dave that Els wants producer credit for all of the tracks that he helped produce, and Dave is not happy with that. He doesn't think that Els deserves it. But Els' manager contacted Mike, so now Mike is running it by Dave, which I'm sure Dave probably doesn't like the fact that it was communicated in that way, more so than, I'm sure if Els had come to Dave man to man and asked for it, it would have been received quite a bit different than how it would have been received having his people go through Dave's people. So he's not happy. Dave's already in a mood. They go to the back of the house. Great, big, giant house. They go to the backyard where everything is still being set up. The tables are being set up. And Els is there in front of his turntables. Not happy with the situation. They got like poor, like low quality equipment. The way it's set up isn't working for him, but Els really doesn't care. Like, this is so beneath what Els has come accustomed to with live performances after going on tour with a major artist, hip-hop artist, that doing a bar mitzvah is like amateur hour for him, and he doesn't really care. And just lets Dave take over the sound check on his own, since Dave clearly doesn't think that Els does much. Like, there is a lack of respect that Dave has for the work that Els does, and doesn't think, not saying it out loud, but definitely in his passive-aggressive way, just thinking, just not really giving much respect to the work Els does. And, of course, part of the issue is that there's a blind keyboardist who memorized the space, so they don't want to move the keyboard to give more room, and Els is just like, whatever. So he just grabs a basketball, and there's a basketball court in the back of the yard. Full basketball court, by the way. Gorgeous. Would have loved to have at least a half-court legit basketball court instead of like a driveway basketball court, which I grew up with. And now a quick word from our sponsor. Now you can wear The Many Faces, original art by Ray Taylor. Select pieces from the ongoing series of abstract ink paintings. All products made with high-quality materials, made right here in the USA. Go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch to browse the entire collection and save yourself an extra 10% when you check out by using coupon code RTSTMF. So once again, go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch and save 10% when you use coupon code RTSTMF. And now, back to our show. But Els is like just done. It's like, I'm going to go shoot some hoops. Dave is doing the sound check, basically just talking shit into the mic, trying to get, also kind of attempting to see if Els can hear him from the back of the area, back of the space, the back of the backyard. But Els is just completely over it, completely. And Dave is pissed, so Dave goes back, and they play one-on-one. And it's a war going on. There's two vastly different energies going on at this house, right? You have Els and Dave in a war of one-on-one basketball, which is great. I mean, makes me want to go start playing basketball again. But they are playing one-on-one, like just all out. I mean, that's one thing about basketball, is that you can get your frustrations out. You can play hard, and they're playing hard. And then the complete opposite end of that spectrum is Mike inside the house with the dad of the kid that's getting this bar mitzvah. And Mike, I don't know if it's daddy issues that Mike has, but Mike is like enthralled with this guy, and there's this love fest, so much so that Mike like invents this kid, the 6-year-old kid that he has, in order to relate to this dad more. Which is funny. It's just kind of like, it's almost also how desperate Mike is for like human connection. Like, ever since he became Dave's manager, like his like position in the group is very like just very by the books business wise. There is like the friendship is like pretty much non-existent in a lot of ways. So I'm sure he's like just thirsty for just any kind of like back and forth camaraderie with anybody. So he's trying to get that from this dad, even, making up the kid, having this love fest, having them bond over this, like how hard it is for kids when they're growing up as a parent and all this kind of stuff. Then cut back to the basketball game, and Els wins, and he's like, give me some credit on that. Like, you can give me some credit on that. And, of course, Dave bringing it back to the credit that they haven't even talked about yet, but this is how Dave brings it up. It's like, well, why don't you have your manager contact Mike so I can give you some credit on that? You know, clearly talking shit about the fact that Els didn't just approach him man to man and had to go through their managers to ask for this credit, which is kind of a ridiculous credit. I don't know exactly how hip-hop credits go, but I know producers in hip-hop, depending on who they are, demand a high level of promotion and credit for the music that they work on. But Els firing back at Dave that he's not a good artist. He's a shitty artist. He's just a bum. And on some level, I mean, it's not true, but also Dave is unproven, basically, is in a lot of ways what Els' point is like, you're talking all this shit as if you're some superstar already. But Els has worked with the real deal. He knows the work that goes into being a successful musician, being a successful artist, being a successful hip-hop artist. And Dave is like pretending to be that, but still at the very first steps of the starting line. So, you know, you can it's easy to talk shit about somebody, especially like when you have experience and somebody that clearly doesn't have experience is pretending. It's like that fake it till you make it thing doesn't necessarily work around people that have made it. Like, they are the first to see through your bullshit. Like, you may trick everybody else. You may be tricking this kid that is dying for Little Dicky, to perform at his bar mitzvah, but you're not tricking somebody who's actually in the business, who actually has experience. And he threw it right back at Dave's face in a very similar way to what we saw in the last episode when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar says he was nothing. You are not. I think was his words. You are not. You are not everything you think you are. You are not. And just another chip to hit Dave's ego, slowly realizing that he is not. And that people that are close to him, that have known him his entire life, are letting him know that he is not. More so than just an idol like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Cut to now, GaTa is at the end of a date. He's walking his date home, walking her to her door at her apartment complex, saying goodbye, saying goodnight, and he's gotta get ready for the tomorrow's show or whatever, the bar mitzvah. So they say good night, and he goes and he sees that his car is missing, got towed. Goes back to the apartment door where it's got one of those intercom things, and he's trying to scroll through all the names, and of course he doesn't remember what her last name was, so he's not able to contact her to get her to buzz him in and give him a ride. So he's locked out basically, and reaches for his phone, and of course his phone is dead. So now it's GaTa, it's at night, and he's just hoofing it. He's just walking because he needs to find a charger. On his walk, he walks by a gas station, buys a charger, tries to ask the attendant to see if he can just charge his phone inside the little booth. Denied. So then GaTa tries to pay this homeless guy to move out of the way so he could try and use the electrical outlet that the ATM machine is plugged into outside of the gas station. And while attempting to do that, is denied, is told to go away by the gas station attendant. Then there's a couple, this white couple that pulled up to the gas station in an SUV, and GaTa's like asking them, it's like, can I please just charge my phone in your car real quick? They say no. This white guy that's got the high and tight military cut, obviously racist, locks his door, boop, boop, boop. Right, to make sure GaTa doesn't get in and like use their charger, use the electricity in their precious SUV. So he's denied. So he moves on. Walks by a bakery that's just starting to get ready for the day, but still not open yet. Because, of course, bakeries, they start super early. You know, you got to get those donuts fresh and ready to go for when everybody's on their way to work. So the bakery always getting prepared, but still not open yet and not able to help GaTa. So no help here. Keep on moving. Then he walks by this house. It's got a gate in front of it, giant fence in front of it. House has got the Christmas lights hooked up. So another sign that it's Christmas time in L.A., in Hollywood. And GaTa decides to hop the fence. And this whole time it's like stressful. It's like, I don't know what parts of L.A. he's walking. I mean, it's just like walking around at night in a city. It's sketchy because you don't know who you're going to run into, what kind of desperate people are out trying to do desperate things. And then also GaTa being black and it being in L.A., the LAPD, along with many police departments across the country, are murderers, and get away with murdering people of color. But I mean, they murder. I mean, not even like just adults. Like cops kill children and get away with it all of the time. So sometimes, I mean, you have like the fear of people who are desperate and roaming the streets of LA at night. But then I would say the biggest fear is that of the police department, who are terrorists and like to murder people, because there is really little to no. I mean, the worst. I mean, maybe you get accused, maybe you go to trial, but generally that stuff never sticks. A lot of the times they just go on a paid vacation after they kill somebody. So you know, there's a lot of I have a lot of love for GaTa, and I don't want anything bad to happen. So this is stressful, and also the score, very like ominous, just like a simple like bass kind of line to like score these scenes, which ratchets up the tension a bit. So he jumps over this fence, which is like, oh my God. And of course, right when he jumps over the fence, there's this car that kind of turns and goes past the house. So it's like, oh, hopefully they didn't see him, hop the fence. And then he goes to plug his phone in to where the Christmas lights are plugged in, and all of the Christmas lights go out while he's charging his phone. Kind of charges his phone really fast, but is able to make a call to see where his car's at, and I assume charge the phone enough to order an Uber or something to take him to this tow yard where his car is at, because cut to, he gets out of a car. Somebody gave him a ride. I assume it's like an Uber or Lyft situation, and he's at the tow yard. But of course, I mean, you can see the sun, the sky is just starting to light up. It's like just the beginning moments of sunrise. So GaTa has been out all night trying to track down his car. Well, first trying to get his phone charged, and then trying to track down his car. And it's still too early. The tow yard doesn't open up till 7 a.m. It's probably like 4 or 5 a.m. right before sunrise. So he just pops a squat right in front of the place and waits. And it's like a stressful scenes, because you love GaTa and you don't want anything bad to happen to GaTa. Although on some level you have, I feel that GaTa can handle himself far more than if it was, I mean, I guess if it Els, let's say, right? Els, so similar melanin content as GaTa, but you know, suburbs guy. He's not streetwise. He's not street smart, right? You could almost see like Dave or Mike having a situation, but because they're both white, they probably wouldn't run into the same types of trouble that GaTa and Els would run into. And if it were Els out on the street instead of GaTa, I would say it would be even more stressful of a scene. But GaTa gets to the tow yard and is waiting for sunrise. Cut back to the bar mitzvah is going on. The kid is being raised up in the chair as happens in bar mitzvahs. I remember as a kid, I went to a bar mitzvah, and it was probably the most fun thing I ever had. It was so much fun. And I think it was it's like one of the most fun parties I've ever been to. And I was a kid. And I'm not a big fun party guy. I don't like a lot of people around. I wasn't even drinking because I was just, super young. I was probably like, I don't know what age you are at bar mitzvah, like 13, maybe 12. And I didn't know the kid. It was like a friend of a friend. I spent a lot of time at friends' houses, and this friend was going to a thing. So what happens is I go to those things because that's where I live. I spent a lot of time as a child living with other people, for the most part, like on weekends and summers. I didn't really, anyway. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. So that I remember that, and that they're mid bar mitzvah. You got Dave and Mike. Dave is telling he's got a part of their deal is that he has to do like this meet and greet thing with the kids. He's got to do at least 20 minutes, but Dave's like, oh, I'll give him 25 minutes. I mean, Dave in a lot of ways has been mentally preparing for the moment to hang out with these kids, more so than any other aspect of this gig. Is him constantly reminiscing of all these stories of him as a kid, which is perfect fodder for when you're going to sit down with all these young, impressionable minds. So while Dave is chit-chatting, destroying the minds of the youth, Mike is hanging out with the dad again, further bonding. Now Mike's like inventing a wife, inventing these charities, this charity that she works for that's like anti-racism, God, what was the other thing? I forget. It was like two things kind of twist together. Kind of funny, but also a scene that sets up the politics of the dad. Right? Where Mike's like, oh, I'm super liberal. I'm almost so liberal I almost come around the other way. And the dad's like, Mike asks him, it's like, you're BLM, right? You're BLM. And the dad's like, yeah, okay. So you kind of know politically they're both on the liberal spectrum of things, which makes sense. And Mike is just trying to, and also like talking about stories about his fake kid. Like he's got like the backstory and everything all together. Meanwhile, Dave is like corrupting these kids' minds. Not only telling him all the things that he used to do as a kid, like shit on top of shit, like where you and your friends all take laxatives and you take turns shitting on top of their shit pile in the toilet, and taking Polaroid pictures of it and putting them up everywhere. And these kids are living knowing that they live in an era of social media, are very concerned and very aware of the quote-unquote cancel culture, which I would say cancel culture is way more of a reality for regular people in a school than it is for celebrities. Because every single celebrity I've seen get canceled is still doing exactly what they did before. There is zero difference in lifestyle, really. Maybe they lost out on a role here or there. Maybe they weren't in the they were taken out of a movie or whatever. But they're like, for a lot of the comedians who are quote unquote canceled, they're still signing deals. They're still touring the country. There's very little to nothing has actually happened as far as in the way of canceling. But as far as kids go, regular people, there's definitely much more cancel culture potential. And they are very aware of it, despite how Dave is trying to give them the out. It's like, you can get away with whatever when you're a kid. You're not fully formed. Like, you're not an adult yet. You can't be charged with stuff. You know, really trying to be the bad influence on young kids, that type of a role model, which is just another way in which Dave is reminded how immature he is. Because, like, Dave is like, well, you know, this ritual that you're doing with the bar mitzvah, it's, you know, he's talking about how, you know, the religious aspect of it is kind of ridiculous, but the whole thing is just you becoming a man, taking more responsibility, helping out, doing these things, starting your growing up. And then all the kids are like, well, we don't want to do that. We want to be like you. You never grew up. And Dave's like, oh yeah, I guess maybe I'm not a good role model, because that is not what you should do. And it's just another way in which this show is telling Dave that, like, hey, maybe you should reflect on who you are and what you're doing to the people around you, because maybe you are acting like a child. And maybe it's not good that these kids, like, he's seeing his influence on these kids, and maybe having second thoughts. Cut to Els is on the phone with his manager talking about the whole producer credit ordeal, and saying that it was just, he doesn't really care. It was more of a test to see how Dave would react to it, which clearly he got his answer of how Dave would react to it. Meanwhile, Dave, just having the conversation with the kids where he's reminded of, has the kind of realization of the immaturity that he's been displaying, is going to talk to Els because he wants to have a adult conversation about this thing. So he tracks Els down, and they go try to find a quiet place to have a conversation. They open the door to the garage, where Dave and Els, like, they open the door, and in the garage are all of the kids that Dave was just talking to. One of the kids is on his knees. Another kid has, like, a bag over his head with his shirt off, while it's like he has the fat kid and he's holding his man titties. And it's just a wild scene that really only provides giant question marks as to what the kids were doing. It is not clear at all what the kids were doing, but you know it wasn't good. And after seeing that momentarily, Dave and Els are traumatized. And cut to now they're at the bar, just staring out into the distance, not really sure how to contemplate what they just saw, not sure if or what they should do. Should they talk to the parents? Slowly sipping on their drinks. Then all of a sudden the dad comes busting out of the house, obviously phone in hand. He knows what happened. He's not happy. He's angry at Dave, and he shows him the phone, and Dave's like, why did you post it on TikTok? It's like Dave is angry that they went so public with it, which is far different than just taking Polaroids and sticking it up everywhere. So Dave is, like, you know, trying to, I don't know, he's kind of, like, upset at where these things are going. The dad's super pissed. Els is like, dad's like trying to fire him, and Els is like, no, you have a contract with us. You need to pay us for the contract. And then the dad turns into not so liberal, telling Dave to control his posse, as if Els isn't the most famous person in that crew at the time. But clearly just because Els is black, feeling very comfortable downgrading him to posse, which doesn't make Els feel happy, doesn't make Dave feel happy. And Mike hears that, and Mike, after clearly going over the politics of this guy that he's been schmoozing with and in love with, having this love fest, is now like seeing a new side of this dad. And then the dad yells at the kid, and Mike, probably in some ways internalizing a dad yelling at a kid as maybe how Mike's character's dad would yell at him, steps in to defend the kid. But cut to Dave and Mike walking out, getting kicked out again, laughing. They're bonded. I mean, after seeing what they saw and then just being kicked out of this bar mitzvah again, reminding them of the good old days of what it was like when they were kids getting kicked out of bar mitzvahs. Dave, or Mike, I think, has the idea to let they had like a petting zoo kind of a situation out in the front yard. So he decides to open up the gate and let all the animals out, like the llamas and sheep and all the different animals they had, this petting zoo, causing even more trouble. It's like, might as well. It's already gone to shit. Let's have some good old fun and let all these animals out. Then GaTa pulls up. Finally, GaTa pulls up. He got his car. You see him pull around the corner. You have, from GaTa's point of view, as he's pulling up, he's seeing all these farm animals running around. He's like, what is going on in this place? And gets out of his car, texts Dave, but, Dave isn't there. The kid that's having the bar mitzvah is running out to try and get Dave, and is upset because his dad kicked Dave out. But then he sees GaTa, and he's like, oh, GaTa, I know you too. I know all your songs. So GaTa, taking the moment, as GaTa does, and makes the best of it, decides to give them and the kid whose birthday it is, as well as all of his friends, a little show out on the street, gets up on his car, and performs the same song that we opened the show with, this episode with, Check Up. And it's great. It feels good because GaTa was there, seized an opportunity to do his own performance outside of Dave, makes it a happy ending for not only GaTa but for this kid whose bar mitzvah was ruined by his dad. Well, also ruined by his poor choice in activities and how to display those for the whole world to see, but a good end nonetheless. And that was the episode of Dave, episode 5, Bar Mitzvah. Next week, I'll be talking about episode 6, Somebody Date Me, and I will break that one down. But this was a fun episode. You got to see at least Els hasn't been a big aspect of this show this season. This only being his second thing, but it reminded the audience, it showed the audience what it is to be in a long-term friendship. I mean, when you're friends for a long time, you're going to have those moments where you're playing super hard one-on-one against each other. You're getting out that aggression on the court, but then, also able to flip it on a switch and be good old friends like nothing has ever happened. And it kind of left that friendship in a good place, I think. But that is the end of episode 5 of Dave, season 2. And I will do season 2, episode 6, Somebody Date Me, next week. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at InspiredDisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at InspiredDisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.